Welcome to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. I'm your host, Fabian motherfucking Ojeda, and I don't know shit, but that's okay. All right, let's get this shit started. Thank you everybody for listening to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the last time I was on, which was almost a month, I think. You know, I apologize everybody for the hiatus. Definitely had a lot of good things going on. So we will put out an episode very soon, kind of chronicling some of that and, you know, talking about this little gap in between. But whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or whatever, you know, always have a good time. And I'm back for a good time today with a brand new guest, never been on the podcast. So definitely want to welcome him today. I want to welcome Mr. John Bukowski. How you doing today?
Very good. Fabian, thanks for having me. You pronounced my name right. That's good.
Yeah, it's always a plus, right? How do some people butcher it? I'm curious because
the most common is Bukowski. They want to put an R in there. I don't know why, but they do.
You know what seemed almost natural to me was putting an L for some reason. Like
I've seen that too. I've seen that too.
No, but I stuck to my guns. Nothing after that. You.
Right.
Yeah. No, but that's good. I always get you kind of happy when I don't butcher somebody's name, and if I have to butcher it, I'm just going to butcher it all the way. They don't seem to mind too much. But where are you joining us from?
Eastern Tennessee, a little town called Townsend. We have a nice little mountain cabin kind of deal going on. That's where I write from, and it's where we're living right now.
Yeah, because every time I do accept somebody on the podcast, like do a little research, see where they're from, kind of look up any Instagram or Facebook and things like that. I caught myself there. I always say MySpace for some reason, even though it doesn't exist anymore, really. But just to see, who I'm talking to, what they're all about. And you have a beautiful house, man. I was like, dang, I couldn't believe it. I was like, as I'm a new homeowner, and I'm just like, at the beginning of trying to put everything together, remodel things.
Oh yeah, been there a dozen times.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful home. I was like, that's what I was wondering. I'm like, man, where is that? Because I need to find me a spot there eventually.
Yeah, we're in the foothills of the Smokies.
All right, nice.
So it's nice except for the tourists.
Oh, okay, a lot of tourists.
Well, we're in between Knoxville and Gatlinburg, so we get some.
Okay, well, as long as you ignore them, right?
Right.
All right. Well, we have you on for really to talk about your book, but also beyond that, I like to really pick at people's brains, especially when it comes to creative things like writing, making movies, or anything like that. Everybody's got even if it's a similar skill, even if I've talked to other writers before, everybody has a different story getting there. And
Sure.
I definitely want to check what your story is, check it out, and tell it to the audience, and really the reason being why is I like the kind of like the behind the scenes of things. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
You've got a pretty interestingly titled novel there, right? It's Suicide Project.
Project Suicide.
I apologize. Project Suicide.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the story of how a cure for Alzheimer's disease is perverted into an assassination drug. Mm-hmm. Now, high-profile politicians are killing themselves, and only a drunken genius can save the country. So not much at risk there, huh?
Yeah, I can't imagine that. Somebody who doesn't give a damn about anything, he's just you're gonna have to go and save the world, right?
Right.
So how did you even start with that story? Because you have like this anti-hero that, right? He's given the most important task in the world, right?
Yeah. Well, the way I came up with the idea was I was visiting my father-in-law. I used to see him once a week. He passed away about 4 years ago, and he suffered from a form of dementia, not as bad as Alzheimer's, but he was, I don't know if you've ever experienced that with anybody you've known or loved. But it's sad to watch. He was a brilliant engineer for Ford Motor Company, made race car engines back in the 60s and designed them. And he got to the point where he couldn't tell time. And I started thinking, well, this is terrible. I know they're looking for a cure. And then it hit me, the what if moment. And what if is a big thing for writers. What if a giant killer shark terrorized a resort community and the chief of police was afraid of the water? You've got Jaws. What if you could actually get dinosaur DNA out of fossils and you could make your own dinosaurs? You've got Jurassic Park. Well, my what if they had a cure for Alzheimer's, but it had a side effect? What if at the time that it blocked the gene for Alzheimer's, it also blocked an adjacent gene for self-preservation? Then as your sense of self returned, so would a sense of self-loathing. So what if, this is the big what if you gave this to somebody who didn't have dementia? It'd be the perfect assassination drug because they would kill themselves. It's an assassin's dream. You can't possibly be implicated. They killed themselves.
Right.
And that's how I came up with the idea for Project Suicide.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. I mean, I can think right now to the people who've been saying for like, decades, like, hey, there's a cure for cancer out there. You're just not giving it to us, right?
Right.
Or there's a cure for AIDS. And you're not giving it to us.
And that's the thing. It taps into several things which I think are topical in people's minds. One is finding some cure for dementia. Everybody almost now knows somebody who's had dementia or some famous celebrity, whether it's Charlton Heston or Bruce Willis or what have you. Then also the idea of suicide. With COVID, we've seen an increase in suicides, people being isolated. And the third being just the fact that we're dealing with drug side effects. People are really concerned, whether it's a vaccine or a drug, they're concerned with the side effects. Is the cure worse than the disease? And so I think it taps into all those things simultaneously.
With this, I mean, you want to make sure that when you're writing about things like this, different drugs and stuff like that, maybe you want to make sure that you're accurate. So do you do a lot of research on this or?
I did. My background for writing fiction is a little bit unusual because I started in a strict science track in school. I got a bachelor's in science, went on and got a doctorate in veterinary medicine. I practiced in Michigan for about 7 years. After about my 1000th euthanasia, which is an unfortunate part of the job, I decided it was time to move on to something else. And I wanted to do research to find what causes diseases. So I got public health, a doctorate and a master's in public health. And I went on and did research in that. So doing all that, I found that over time, the people I was working for, whether it was government or industry, were asking me to write more and research less. If they had a writing project, they wanted me to do it. And I enjoyed those. So I transitioned to medical writing and was doing that as a contractor. And then the Great Recession of 2008 hit. And clients dried up. They didn't need anybody. And it was a blessing in disguise, really, because I found I had the gift of time. I always loved to read fiction, and I always wanted to write my own book, my own novel. And so I wrote one over a period of about 8 months, and it's never been published. It's sitting in a drawer, what Stephen King would call a trunk novel. But it got me going. And over the next several years, I started transitioning out of the medical writing into fiction writing. And that led to the publication of Project Suicide. So in that respect, I have the bona fides, I have the medical knowledge to deal with these things. And certainly I did my research. I looked up things about genetics, what have you. But here's a little hint than most people understand about research and fiction. Research is important, but only as important as it is to sell the lie, because that's what we're in the business of, selling lies. We write fiction, we make it up. It's like a good con man. You know, you want to have enough truth in there so that people will buy the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
As one of my favorite authors is Michael Crichton, and this book has a lot of similarities to the kind of techno-fiction that Crichton wrote with Jurassic Park and Andromeda Strain and things like that. And he once was asked, before you did Jurassic Park, did you spend weeks at a genetics research lab doing research? And he said, why would I do that? They can't make a dinosaur either.
Mm-hmm.
You're making it up.
Right.
But you want enough truth so that people go, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. I'm going to buy the rest of it.
Mm-hmm. You know, that makes a lot of sense, because that's like anybody you start to follow, or anybody you start to really, you know, put a lot of you know, a lot of eggs in their basket kind of thing, is that they speak with such authority, right? They speak with such authority, and as long as they have that little nugget of truth, you're just like, see what I mean? They know what they're doing. They know they're
and that's a mistake a lot of fiction writers make when they're starting out, is they'll do research on something, but then they'll give you everything they researched. You'll have 20 pages of technical material as if it's a training manual. And no one wants to read that. I don't want to read that. And the point is, give just enough so that people go, yes, I'm buying this. I'm not going to roll my eyes and say this can't happen. This could happen. Then you've got them. Then they're going to buy the rest of it. And that's the goal.
Yeah. No, I like it. I like it definitely, for sure. I just the way you described it right now, I just figured it out. I'm like, it does work, I guess. You know, the whole, you know, being the pseudo expert, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Now with that, you know, in Project Suicide, I mean, are you it's fiction, you know, you're like you said, you're selling the lie, but I mean, you personally, are you making a sort of claim in there, or is it just all for entertainment?
Well, the goal, number one, is to be entertainment. If people can read it, enjoy it, want to turn that next page, come to the end of the chapter and go, you know what? I was going to go to sleep now, but I got to read one more chapter. That's the goal. So yeah, there is that as the ultimate goal. But the one thing I always loved about Michael Crichton's writing, and Robin Cook's, who's another techno thriller author, is they give you a little bit of education. You know, if you don't know something about genetics, you read Jurassic Park, you're going to get a little bit of an education in genetics. Just enough to make you buy into the rest of it, but also makes you feel like I learned a little something. And that's also a goal. It's not the primary goal, but if you can do that, I think it makes it more entertaining. It's just like teaching anything. Teaching history and making it entertaining, teaching biology and making it entertaining. It's the same kind of thing. And a lot of the work I did with medical writing, a lot of it was for consumer audiences, writing for consumer handbooks or website content or audio scripts. It's to get people interested in something that is a little bit technical, but explain it in a way they can understand and enjoy.
Okay, simplifying it, making it digestible.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, it's always good. Now you mentioned you had your trunk novel. You have this novel, right? Are you working on anything else, or I mean, how many novels are you?
Well,
are you planning another one?
Sure, I've got one right now that's going out to the publisher probably next week. It's called Checkout Time, and this is a little bit different. It's about a arsonist who is trying to extort money from a group of hotel owners by bombing their hotels. And he basically says, give me money or I'm going to bomb your hotels and people will die and you'll be responsible. And it just so happens the very first hotel he bombs, as an example, on the same floor where the bomb goes off, there's a beautiful FBI agent and a handsome government researcher sleeping on that same floor. And they become involved in the search for him. And he also become involved in a hunt for them. So you've got that going on. The hunter becomes the hunted kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the next one. That's Checkout Time. And I'm also working on a sequel to Project Suicide.
All right. Man, this sounds like, the way you describe the stories, it sounds like very easy to maybe even just translate those into some sort of streaming service, like some sort of like Netflix movie or Hulu series or something like that. Is that?
Well, obviously that's a goal. If you know anybody who's in the industry who wants some high concept material, I am more than willing to discuss it. And I don't charge as much as Stephen King or James Patterson for my work. So you get a little bit of a benefit. But that's also a point you make, is that the point of writing a novel is like writing a movie in your head. There's a movie screening in your head as you're writing it. And the goal is to get people to see the same movie. Maybe not exactly the same. Characters might be slightly different, but basically the same movie. And if they can follow along with the movie, then you've accomplished your goal.
Mm-hmm. Now, writing in general, I think for a lot of people, it's like a daunting thing. Some people don't even like to write a paragraph.
Right.
I imagine that, if you're sitting there and you're really enjoying what you're doing, you're just cranking it out, right? Has that always been something that you've been comfortable with, something that you've enjoyed? Or how do you even get to that point where you're cranking out a book, because a lot of people have that goal, but they don't know how to get started with it.
Right. Well, it has always been something I enjoyed. Going back into high school, when there was a writing assignment, I always enjoyed it. And even with all my scientific endeavors, there's always been, I'd enjoyed the writing. And you make a good point. A lot of people want to write, but they either don't get started or they get started and stop when it gets hard. Yes, you're right. Writing is daunting. It's not an easy profession. And you have to treat it like a business, which means you have to be disciplined and write every day. I've had authors say to me, plumbers never get plumber's block. They don't ever stop plumbing because they don't feel like it that day. You have to have the same attitude with writing. You set yourself up a word goal, 1,000 words, 500 words. Stephen King does 2,000 words a day, which is crazy. But you set yourself a goal or number of hours that you work on it. You're either writing or editing. And you do that as a discipline every day. But because it's such a hard thing to do with such low return potential until you get going, you have to also have it as a hobby. It has to be something you love. If I don't write or edit, revise something I'm writing on for a couple days in a row, I don't feel good. I have to be doing it. And that's how you have to think about it. It's a sincere hobby that you treat like a business.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I'm a pretty creative person, I think, but when it comes down to it, like I don't think I could write full time. It's just it's not in me. I think I'm more like
that's good to recognize too. There's a lot of people want to be writers, but they don't want to write, or even worse, they don't want to read. You can't be a good writer if you don't read a lot.
I think that's the part for me.
Yeah, and that's fine. Not everybody's a writer. I wish some of the people want to be writers would stop. Just because there's a lot of material out there. That's the industry has changed dramatically over the past 20, 30 years, so that there's a lot of people self-publishing now, which is great because people who want to get their stuff out there can. And the problem is people who want to get their stuff out there can. Some of it's not so good. So it's not everybody's a writer, and that's okay. And those of us who are selling the lie, we'll keep on doing it.
I think when we talk about self-publishing, you got to get some of these people getting better editors too, right? Because that's the thing that hurts me.
Well, I see a lot of stuff. I'm on some writers forums and stuff like that. And you see a lot of stuff, people saying, I want to hire a professional editor, but I don't want to pay anything. Well, then you don't want a professional editor.
Mm-hmm.
Professional editors are worth their money. I love editors. Editors, you can't possibly see the book the way the reader sees it, but editors can. And one that's good will say, you know what, this is way too long. This is too complicated. Shorten this. Make this a cliffhanger ending. All the things that you don't see because you're too close to it. You can't possibly see it. This is the process of a book, which people don't understand. You don't just write a draft in 6 or 8 months and send it off to the publisher and it's published. You write a draft and you let it sit for a few weeks while you work on short stories or another novel or whatever. Then you come back and you revise it. Once you're done with the first revision, it goes off to beta readers, writers you trust who can give you an opinion. And you work on some other stuff. They give you your feedback. You revise again. A few more weeks go by. You revise again. After like 4 to 6 months of revising, then maybe after the 5th or 6th revision, it's ready to go off to an editor. And the editor is going to have suggestions on how to make it better. And so from the time that you start the book until it goes to publication is probably 2.5 years.
Well, it sounds like you need to drop any kind of ego you have about it too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you don't hate your editor a little bit for making you change stuff that you love, he's not doing a good job. He or she is not doing a good job. It's what they call in the industry or in writing, killing your darlings. Sometimes you write a passage which you just think is brilliant, and maybe it is. And there's great turns of phrase, there's great word choice, but it just slows the novel down. You got to get rid of it. And the editor points that out, says, put it away, save it for some other time. It's not for this book.
Yeah, I mean, then at that point you gotta, like, you probably spent so much time on it. You're like, what? How is that going to work? If
Yeah, absolutely. You've spent a lot of time on it. You are too close to it, and so you need these other sets of eyes that come at it fresh, because the reader can't be inside your head. The goal is to make the reader inside your head as much as possible, but you need someone else to look at it and say, this is how it reads. A lot of times when I'm revising, I will read things aloud. And because you're looking at it so often, you know what it's supposed to say in your head. And that's good enough because you're in your head. But when you read it aloud, it's like, well, I stumbled over these words. Well, maybe they need to be rewritten, because someone else coming to read it is not going to see it the way it reads in my head. They're going to see it the way it reads on the page.
Yeah. Now, earlier we talked about maybe people don't like to read as much, right? And I think I work in schools, or I work with schools, and it's true. Kids hate reading, they hate writing, but also adults. I'm actually guilty of that. I'm not a big fan of reading, but I'm going to use the poor kid card here and say, because I never had a quiet space to read, right? But do you see that as a problem as well? As that, as an author, that maybe people are just not really reading anymore?
It's an odd dichotomy, because people aren't reading as much, but people are writing stuff more than ever.
Yeah.
Everybody, whether they're writing a blog or they're writing a novel or they're getting short stories out there, everybody's writing and not as many people are reading. So yeah, that is an issue. But the people who are reading, they're interested in something interesting. And that's what I'm trying to provide. Something that's entertaining. And what most people, and you see if you receive my reviews on Amazon or whatever, most people have said, this is a page turner. I want to keep reading. And that's the best you can possibly hope for.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that again, just to kind of compare it to streaming, there, it's like almost like a compliment, like Breaking Bad, where you're like, oh, I want to know what the next episode is, right? I want to jump
exactly. You want to get, especially with a thriller, which is designed for a cliffhanger ending. You want the end of a chapter to be, you know what? I was going to stop, but I want to keep going. And if you can get that, well, then you've got them.
Okay. Where are you? I mean, other than doing a lot of writing and everything like that, are you currently like fascinated with any other authors? Are you reading anything right now?
I'm actually reading a book. I can't remember the author's name, unfortunately, but I think it's Simmons, about Ernest Hemingway. It's a fictionalized account of his work during World War II as a sub-hunter. Not many people know that Ernest Hemingway, living in Cuba in the 1940s, got loaded up by the U.S. government with machine guns and hand grenades and other things, and he rode around in his boat trying to catch submarines. I don't think he caught any, but it's an interesting idea, and this guy has turned it into an interesting historical fiction thing. So I like that. My favorite authors are probably Ernest Hemingway, Stephen King, Elmore Leonard. If anybody hasn't, people have probably seen the movie Get Shorty or Jackie Brown, both based on Elmore Leonard books. Justified, the series that was out not that many years ago, was an Elmore Leonard idea, which he wrote scripts for until he died. So yeah, people always ask me, how do you learn to write dialogue? And I say, well, two things. I was really involved in community and regional theater for about 15 years.
Okay.
And you read plays. Plays are only dialogue and stage direction. That's all. So you really learn dialogue from that. And the other way is read Elmore Leonard. He's the king of dialogue. I mean, he's widely acknowledged as a guy that, even though you don't know how tough guys sound, in your head, they sound like Elmore Leonard dialogue.
Okay. Now, with that, I find that interesting because if, let's say, you want to have dialogue between people that are completely different from you, right? You don't speak the way they do, right? But you want to make sure that, whatever setting you're in, it's true to the people that are there, right? Is that difficult for really trying to set up the dialogue? Because, like, if I'm talking about, I'm in California, right? And if I'm trying to have a dialogue, and I'm writing about it, and it's between, two people in, I don't know, in Mississippi, it's not gonna be the same thing. I'm not gonna know unless I really kind of just hang out there in Mississippi for a while, hear all the subtle things, right? And so is that ever a concern?
Well, we all have experiences. Maybe you've known somebody from Mississippi or the Deep South, and you know how they talk. You've seen movies based on the Deep South or read books, whether it's Faulkner or Cantor or somebody. You've read books about the Deep South. It's like being an actor. You can't know everything about everything or have experienced it all, but you bring different aspects of people you've seen, experiences you've had, and you funnel them through yourself so that the final thing that goes on the page sounds realistic. I don't think Elmore Leonard ever knew any mafia wise guys, but his dialogue sounds like he did. And that's the point. It's, you're trying to make it realistic to the point that people believe it. But it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly how somebody from that region or that patois or whatever would sound. If you're writing a police procedural, you should know enough police procedure to make it sound realistic. That's why people like Joseph Wambaugh were so good at it, is because they lived it. And that's the whole idea of writing what you know. You know, I know a lot about medicine and public health, and so my novels have that flavor in them. But that doesn't mean you can't write about what you don't know. It just means you have to do a lot more research.
Right, or really have somebody help you with those finer things, finer notes there, right? Like if somebody's not like you said, you know, when it comes to like law enforcement, right? And they like, you know, make something up and it's completely stupid, right? Somebody who is in law enforcement is going to just, you know,
you want to avoid completely stupid,
right?
When I was writing Checkout Time, which is my next one coming out, some of it involved FBI agents and took place in FBI field offices. Well, I wanted to see what that was like. I mean, I've seen movies and TV shows, Silence of the Lambs or whatever. But so I asked the Cincinnati field office and the Knoxville, Tennessee field office if I could get a tour. And Cincinnati said no. The agent in charge didn't allow that. But Knoxville said sure. And so I had about an hour and a half private tour of the entire facility. Got to know the armorer, got to meet the special agent in charge. Lovely woman who had a handshake that could make me cringe. And got to see the whole facility, ask questions. And do you think some of that went in to checkout time, excuse me? You bet it did. And it's that little kernel of truth that rings true that makes people buy the lie. It's like being a good con man. If you sell people something, you want to know enough, you want to give them enough reality, enough truth that they buy the rest of it.
Yeah, the reason I kind of bring up that as far as dialogue goes, you know, just because I was always like in movies and stuff, right, or in books, whatever. I was always it was very off-putting when, you know, you would hear like the them trying to portray a character, and like let's say a California guy, right, and all of a sudden he's got like the dude surfer kind of thing. It's like, no, that's just bad. Like, no, that's such a caricature that, you know, that I don't even know where they even got that from. They got that from, you know, maybe Fast Times at Ridgemont High from what's
right. And you want to avoid caricature. That's one of the ideas of writing what you know. If it's close to what you have experienced or people you know have experienced, then you can make it more real. It doesn't mean you can't write about the California guy, but it'd probably be worthwhile spending some time in California. You know, it's if you want to do that.
Yeah, that, or like if, you know, you try to, you know, have characters speaking Spanish and then just the Spanish is so bad, it's like,
right. Well, actually, and in the past, for a novel I've written that has not yet been published, I actually I know some Spanish, and I wrote the Spanish I knew, but then I sent it to a native Spanish speaker to say, "Is this right? This is what I want to say. Here's what I said." And so you're right. It's a better way to sell the lie. If people who are Hispanic can read it and say, that sounds correct, it's going to make it that much more true to them.
Yeah, because like, you know, for the longest time, I mean, anytime I read Spanish, you know, in a book that's not Spanish, it's just like a little piece, right? So it's something in English, and they try to put Spanish in there. Or if I hear it on a show or a movie or something like that, and it's just always been bad. I'm like, no, that's nobody speaks that way. It's not, you know, Google Translate Spanish. Right. You know, well,
you have to make a certain assumption that at least some of your readers will be familiar with this, whether it's police officers or doctors and nurses. For example, in Project Suicide, there's stuff relating to medicine, you know, clinical things. And you don't want it to read so that they roll their eyes and say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And that's where the research comes in. And like I said, not too much. You don't want to dump it all on people. But you want those people who know it to say, yeah, this guy's been there.
Mm. Mm-hmm. You want the experience and the knowledge to kind of just come peeking out, but not to the point where you're overdoing it. I got it. Yeah.
Right. What you want people to do is just like with the movie, you want it to suspend their disbelief because it's a lie. We know that. But you want them to say, wow, this rings true enough that I'm going to buy it. I'm going to keep reading. And I'm going to forget it's a lie, whether it's a play or a movie or a book. You want them to forget that it's on the stage or it's on the page. And you want them to have that movie in their head that they're following along with.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk Project Suicide one more time real quick here, right? People are loving it, right? How's it coming? How you doing with selling the book and everything?
We're doing good. You know, we're constantly marketing, and that's the thing people don't realize about books, whether you're with a publisher or a small publisher like I am, a small press. You are responsible for marketing your book. And so I'm getting out there on podcasts. I've got a book club coming up on in September. I've got some others in the works. You're constantly, if I'm not writing or revising, I'm marketing. And so, yeah, we're doing good. To everybody out there, if you want to check it out, Project Suicide, easiest way is www.projectsuicidenovel.com. That'll take you directly to the Amazon page. You can also order it through Barnes & Noble or any of those. It's on Ingram, the big book distributor. And if you do read it, the best favor you can do an author is to post an Amazon review. Because people decide whether or not they're going to read the book based on reviews, and Amazon decides how they're going to place the book based on reviews. Right.
Okay. For anybody out there, maybe on social media, are you on any social media?
I'm on Facebook, wwc.johnb. That's on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I actually can't remember my Twitter handle. I'm not as active on Twitter as I am on Facebook.
Okay.
You want to go to my website, you can check out different writing samples. That is www.thrillerjohnb.net. And you can get some writing samples, short stories and stuff, connect to those, and see my blog postings. So, yeah, all that's good.
Yeah. So check them out, everyone. Really want to make sure, gets that novel out there. I would love to see it turn into a movie. I'm such a movie person.
Hey, from your mouth to God's ear.
Yeah. Let's make this happen.
To a producer's ear.
Yeah, it sounds like such a cool story, and it might be one of the books I finally actually read. So, I'm
check it out.
Yeah.
It's very reasonable on Kindle. It's basically the price of a cup of coffee, and also the paperback is reasonable. It's on paperback, Kindle, and hardback.
Nice. All right, John, is there anything else you want to throw out there to the podcast world before we cut it here?
No, it's just like I said, www.projectsuicidenovel.com, and post a review on Amazon.
Absolutely. Then John Bukowski, I said it right again. It's been great having you on. I wish you lots of luck and success with all of this and hard work, because it seems like you're putting in all the hard work necessary.
Yeah, and that's the thing people don't understand is writing is hard work.
All right. Well, thank you again. And for everybody listening at home, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Fabian.
Good night.
Night.
Subscribe to the Ignorance is Strength Strength podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Like, follow, and share on Facebook and Instagram at Ignorance is Strength Podcast and on Twitter at The Ignorance Pod.